to complete the literary criticism Preface to William Shakespeare, or a Preface to William Shakespeare, written by the neoclassical critic writer or English critic, literary critic, not political critic, literary critic, Dr. Samuel Johnson. Dr. Samuel Johnson is the most famous critic writer of his time. You can say neoclassical period, neoclassical time. And I read his life story. Before beginning the book, The Life of Cowley, or the biography of Cowley, I first read the life story of the writer, because it was very important for me and for you also. Because if you would like to know the manners, behaviors, language, topics of a writer, first of all read his life, read about his life, about his study life, about his career. So his life story inspired me, and you will have 22 pages in your book, 22 pages containing the life story of Dr. Samuel Johnson. So he didn't become Dr. Samuel Johnson overnight. He struggled too much in his lifetime, and he is not a normal person like us. He was not a normal person like us. His eyesight was very weak, and he was very sick person since his childhood. And there was not any expectation of his parents from him. But what he did during his lifetime, this is just before us right now. One book, A Preface to William Shakespeare, a person who criticized the literary work of William Shakespeare. He praised him, and he find out a few faults and critics, faults and literary problems in the case of a structure, in the case of convention, in the case of you can say racism or classism, distinction, whatever. But before reading this book, you must know about some information that will help you to understand A Preface to William Shakespeare. Okay, so first information is about Dr. Samuel Johnson. He belonged to the neoclassical period. Neoclassical period is the most stylist period and the period of convention and condition, mainly for the literary works. That means if your literary work is out of our condition, it is rejected. Try to understand. It was such a literary time. It was such a literary moment in the history of English literature. Okay, so it was the time of condition and convention. Only the expensive and high literary works were accepted, a kind of literary work which maintained all the rules and regulations of a literary work. Okay, and during that time he is the critic, Dr. Samuel Johnson. So in such a difficult literary time, a critic of that time, how much he is strong in the sense of criticism, you can guess it normally. Okay, so Dr. Samuel Johnson. And the second information is about William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare, no academic knowledge. Whatever we know about the academic education and qualification, about William Shakespeare, everything has been collected on guess, idea, because no written information. Nobody knew or knows about the exact life story of William Shakespeare, mainly the life story of his academic career, the part of his life, first part of his life. So there are different kind of stories about his childhood, about his educational life. So this is second information. William Shakespeare had not any higher academic knowledge. So he has, or he had, a God-gifted knowledge that is called aesthetic power, aesthetic knowledge, that is wisdom. So he was not educated. So he grew up under the shadow of nature. So he belonged his lifetime, He spent his lifetime with the common people, under the shadow of nature, because only the educated person can lead a beautiful life with the educated person, or educated people can contact or communicate with the educated people. That is called close communication, close friendship. Because suppose you are an educated person, so you cannot make a good relationship with an illiterate person. It's not possible, because he will not understand your words and you cannot make him understand easily. So this is a condition of friendship, that understanding. Easily you can understand someone. This is the first condition of friendship, that you can understand him, or you can make him understand, or he can understand you, he can make you understand. This is the condition. So my purpose is, my topic is to tell you about William Shakespeare. Is it that, so he was not highly educated, he was not any academic certificate like other writers of his period. He didn't read in Oxford or Cambridge University. Okay, actually he didn't read in any university during his lifetime. Yet he composed 37 plays, and the last play, The Tempest, was incomplete. Okay, so it was not incomplete because before his death, 2 years he was sitting idle. That means he didn't do any literary work. The Tempest was also complete. Okay, but it is said that it was incomplete. So my topic is to tell you that William Shakespeare was like a common man, common person. So because of his education and qualification, he could not communicate with the people of higher class. He did not lead his life with the people of aristocratic society. It's very normal, you can guess it. Use your common sense. Okay, so first of all, find out the academic knowledge of William Shakespeare, then you can think and you can observe in your society what kind of people mix with what kind of people, or what kind of persons. Okay, so it will help you. So this is the fourth information or third information about William Shakespeare. Now William Shakespeare wrote tragedy, he wrote comedy, even he wrote tragicomedy, he wrote revenge tragedy, he wrote romantic tragedy like Romeo and Juliet, he wrote revenge tragedy like Hamlet. Okay, he wrote tragedy like Macbeth. Okay, only tragedy, revenge tragedy, and romantic tragedy, and tragicomedy, romantic comedy, anti-romantic comedy, William Shakespeare wrote. Okay, even William Shakespeare wrote his dramas can be divided into 3 sections: historical, comedy, historical play, comedy, and tragedy. You can divide into 3 sections. The 37 plays of William Shakespeare can be divided into 3 sections. There you will have historical plays like the life of kings, the reign of kings, okay, the kingdom about kings. This kind of plays are called historical plays. And you know about comedies. Comedies are composed regarding the life of common people, okay, life of normal people, village people. And the tragedies are regarding the people of higher class, higher society, aristocratic society. Okay, my message is to tell you that when I was talking about poetics, about the definition of tragedy, condition of tragedy, the condition before selecting the character of tragedy, and for the writers, what was the condition? The dramatic unities, the maintenance of 3 unities in a play during the Greek time. Okay, so now William Shakespeare as a writer, it's not about his tragedy, about the story of his tragedy, about the theme of his tragedy. It's not your topic. Your course is to talk about the structure of literary work of William Shakespeare. What kind of literary rules he followed or he rejected. Try to understand what kind of literary rules and conditions, even normal rules and conditions, did he follow or didn't. Did he follow during his literary time or he didn't. This is the matter. So you need not any class. If you would read properly as you like it during honors second year, before reading the summary of the romantic comedy, before reading the summary of the comedy as you like it, if you would read the first 30 pages or 40 pages of your academic book, I think you need not join this class, because we during our class time we just read the summary of the book. Even we don't read the dialogues. Let's forget the dialogue. Before reading a book, you must read about the structure of this play, about the features of this play, about the characteristics of this play, and which form, which structure has been used in this play, and which conditions the writer has rejected in order to compose this literary work. You must know before beginning any literary work. So this book, this criticism is about the features, about the characteristics, about the rules, forms and structure of the literary works of William Shakespeare, criticized by the most famous writer, Dr. Samuel Johnson, the writer of neoclassical period. He was a critic, neoclassical critic, okay, Dr. Samuel Johnson. But Dr. Samuel Johnson, in his criticism to William Shakespeare, or a preface to William Shakespeare, he did not blame William Shakespeare, but he has presented the natural side of William Shakespeare. I would like to tell you that why William Shakespeare did so, why he did not write or compose any literary work as the other writers of his lifetime or the contemporary writers of his time did, why he did not follow the conditions of literature as his contemporary writers followed. For example, the university wits, Christopher Marlowe, Greene, Peele, Nishi, Kidd, Lodge, they were educated dramatists of the contemporary time of William Shakespeare. Even Christopher Marlowe, he was senior, okay, and William Shakespeare was inspired by Christopher Marlowe. But they were a group of educated and scholar, legend dramatists, studied in the Oxford University or in the Cambridge University. So their structure was okay, their language was okay. But think about William Shakespeare. He was not like them. Whatever William Shakespeare did in his life for the sake of literature, it was all about his wisdom, about his aesthetic power, okay. And what he did, if you read the life story of William Shakespeare, all critics said that, or maximum critics, they said that William Shakespeare is the greatest dramatist of all time. Even a dramatist of this modern time is also considered good or bad after comparing his drama with the drama of William Shakespeare, okay. And if a drama is good, written by a modern writer, then it is said that William Shakespeare lives in every age. That means the best work of all time is considered by the work of William Shakespeare. Try to understand. So how much he is respected in the field of literature or in the field of drama, okay, though he had not any academic knowledge or higher education and qualification. So what is my purpose to tell you this information? Because this information will help you to decorate your answer. So here, first question, short questions are: evaluate Dr. Johnson as a critic of Shakespeare. Why is Shakespeare called the poet of nature? by Johnson. What does Johnson say about Shakespeare's violation of the Unities? Write a short note on neoclassicism. These are the short questions collected from the set suggestion written by Mazharul Islam. And broad questions: how does Johnson defend Shakespeare's mixing of comic and tragic elements? Discuss Johnson as a modified neoclassical critic. Modified neoclassical critic. How does Johnson glorify Shakespeare as a poet of nature? Comment on Johnson as a critic of Shakespeare. The same questions you have to add more information or less information according to the demand of the question. Okay, so same questions has been repeated in the section of short and broad. So during when you will write the answer, you have to add more information if it is a broad question, and you have to maintain short or less information if it is a short question. Okay, so first of all, evaluate Dr. Johnson as a critic of Shakespeare. So he has written a book of criticism about the literary work of William Shakespeare, and the name is Preface to William Shakespeare. So this sentence is enough to tell it that Dr. Johnson is a critic of William Shakespeare. But as a student, it's not right. We should tell that Dr. Johnson criticized the literary work of William Shakespeare, and he praised about the wisdom, about the talent, about the excellence, and about the best work of William Shakespeare. Okay, and he said that which literary works of William Shakespeare was the best, and in which section William Shakespeare did not maintain the literary works. Okay, because Dr. Johnson was a single critic. That means he was not involved in any specific party. Suppose Dr. Johnson, if he would be involved in a group of writers, then he would criticize the opposite party, the writers of opposite party. But it was not like that. Dr. Samuel Johnson, he was a free person. He was for all. Dr. Samuel Johnson, he was for all. He was such an educated person. He was such a critic. That means if I get your fault, I will try to solve your fault or your mistakes. Okay, and if I get any best or something best in you, then I should present it before the readers or before the public, because this is my duty as a critic. Okay, so that you can be popular, your writing, your works can be popular or can be spread all over the society because of my discussion. Okay, so I should do it. So Dr. Samuel Johnson was such kind of critic writer. Okay, so that's why Dr. Samuel Johnson, you can say the critic of William Shakespeare, he discussed about the violation of unities. About unities, what is unities? Dramatic unities. Okay, simply I would like to tell you that William Shakespeare, as I told you in the beginning, that he was brought up under the shadow of nature. He was not so much educated. He didn't born in a royal family. Okay, so naturally he was inspired and motivated by the behavior of common people, by the natural behavior of common people, common men and women, and he had a good relationship with the common men and women. Now think, if this person who belonged in the rural area and had a good relationship with the common people, men and women, if he writes about something that is collected, being the source of the rural area. For example, you are writing a comedy. And you are a village boy. You are writing a comedy. You are educated, but you grew up under the shadow of nature in your village. You never go to the city or urban area. So you are educated, okay, and you grew up under the shadow of nature. So you have a good communication with the common people. You know about their behaviors, about their language, about their life stories, different situations and incidents of their life. So it is very easy for you to write any story which is based on the life of common people. For example, comedy. What we know about comedy? The characters of comedy are selected or has been selected from the common life, right? From the common people. The characters of comedy are selected from the life of common people. So if you are a comedian or comedy writer, if you are a comedy writer and you belong in the rural area, so it is easy for you to set any story, any characters or any dialogues in your comedy. So definitely you will be the best comedy writer. There is no doubt, because this is very easy one for you and this is very natural for you. So this goes to William Shakespeare. So according to Dr. Samuel Johnson, the comedies of William Shakespeare are the best because he was nursed under the shadow of nature in the rural area and he wrote comedies. Comedy is natural and genuine for William Shakespeare because he had a good and close relationship with the common people, and that's why his comedies are the best. The dialogues of his comedy, the humor of his comedy, the ridiculous situation, the ridiculous plot, the small stories in his play, and everything what he said in his comedy, in his comic play, everything is the best. Why? Because wherever he grew up, he wrote from that life story. That's why his comedy is the best. And this is the opinion, and this is the criticism of Dr. Samuel Johnson. This is the criticism of Dr. Samuel Johnson, and this is right also. But many critics of that time, or many critics of other times, for example, modern time, the critics of modern time, they don't believe or they don't follow the opinion of Dr. Samuel Johnson, because it is not important for the other critics that they will accept easily the criticism of Dr. Samuel Johnson on the comedy of William Shakespeare, because maximum critics and writers, they believe that and they accept that William Shakespeare is the best in every single field. For example, in the field of historical play, in the field of sonnet, in the field of comedy, in the field of tragedy. Okay, so our purpose is for our final exam that what Dr. Samuel Johnson said about the comedy of William Shakespeare, and that's why it is said that the comedy of William Shakespeare is the best. And I think you got it, that why he said it, and this is his explanation that why his comedy is the best. The characters of his comedy are the best, and the dialogues of his comedy are the best. The situations and incidents of his comedy is the best because everything he observed and noticed since his childhood around him, because he grew up in the rural area under the shadow of nature. Now, what Dr. Samuel Johnson said about the tragedy of William Shakespeare, we know that according to the definitions and conditions of tragedy composition told by Aristotle 2500 years ago, that the characters of tragedy are collected from the higher society, from the aristocratic society, among the king and queens. Now I would like to tell you, think about the life of William Shakespeare. In the beginning of tonight's class, I reminded you that William Shakespeare had not any close relationship with the higher society because he was illiterate. He was not any academic knowledge. He had wisdom, God-gifted knowledge, aesthetic power, but not academic knowledge. He had not any education and qualification, and he had not any certificate. Whatever we know about his education, everything is based on guess and idea. Okay, so when William Shakespeare wrote tragedies, his tragedies are the best, stories are the best. But according to Dr. Samuel Johnson, in order to set the story of tragedy, William Shakespeare worked hard worked hard. It was not natural for him, because the story of tragedy has been collected from the aristocratic society, from the life of kings, from the higher society, but he didn't lead his life in such kind of society. So it was his production. He thought deeply. He thought deeply, and very hardly he collected the stories and set the characters in order to compose a tragedy. That's why it's not genuine. It's not the tragedies of William Shakespeare are not genuine. This is a kind of force. That means William Shakespeare struggled hard in order to compose a tragedy. Why? Because he didn't belong in such area, now which is the topic of his literary work. Okay, so this is the opinion of Dr. Samuel Johnson. Though the critics of many times, the critics of modern time, they don't believe this, because they believe that maximum critics, literary critics, they believe that William Shakespeare is the best. His tragedies are the best. There is no doubt. Okay, but we are learning the opinion of Dr. Samuel Johnson, what he said or what he wrote in this criticism, Preface to William Shakespeare. Okay, why I told you about the comedy and tragedy? Because probably you will have a short question or broad questions, that what he said about the tragedy of William Shakespeare, about the comedy of William Shakespeare, and the reasons what I told you right now. These are the reasons. You can explain in such language. This is very easy one for you, easy to remember. Okay, now listen about unities. We know according to Aristotle about the condition of a play, the condition of Greek literature, that the dramatic unities. There are 3 unities in drama. Okay, unity of time, unity of place, and unity of action. But the English dramatist of the Shakespeare's time, during the literary time or during the lifetime of William Shakespeare, English dramatists, they did not maintain 3 unities in their play. So the dramatist of Renaissance period, or the dramatist of 18th century, they maintained only 2 unities, unity of time and unity of place. Unity of time and unity of place. Because if you don't maintain the unity of time, what was it? According to Aristotle, it was you must perform your play on the stage within 24 hours, and 24 hours is the highest time. Because during the emergence of English drama, so you don't have so much time, or you don't have 3 days or 4 days or 1 month to enjoy or to watch or to see the performance of one drama, one play in a stage, or on the stage in a theater. It's not possible. So that's why English dramatists, they maintained the unity of time. So if you don't maintain the unity of time, so your one play will take 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, 1 month, 1 year. There is the possibility. Okay, so the English dramatists, they maintain the unity of time. Then the unity of place. English dramatists, they maintain the unity of time. How? The unity of place. How? Because you can, if you change the unity of place, that means you can change the stage, you can change the theater. So it will be difficult. It will be very difficult for the audience. So they have to move if the stage is moved. Okay. So that's why the English dramatist, or they maintained the unity of time and the unity of place, but they did not maintain the unity of action. What is unity of action? The unity of action refers to the story of the play, the activities of the play, the activities of the characters in a play. That means the story of the play should be based on a single story. The story of the play based or should be written on a single story. For example, the best example is Oedipus Rex. Oedipus Rex is about the story is about Oedipus. Oedipus Rex is about the story of Oedipus. Antigone is about the story of Antigone. Oedipus at Colonus, this is also about Oedipus. Okay, his life at Colonus. Colonus is a state. Okay, so the story or the action of the unity of action, the English dramatist did not maintain this unity of action, because they added little incident, little story in a play. So they did not maintain it, because according to them, if the audience can learn more things, so let them learn. If the audience can learn more things by more stories, more little stories by one play, so let them learn. So some maximum writers of that time, or maximum writers of 18th century, or the English dramatist, they maintained two unities. They rejected the unity of action, so they maintained the unity of time and unity of place. Now let's talk about William Shakespeare. But William Shakespeare, he didn't even maintain the unity of time and unity of place, and this is the criticism of Dr. Samuel Johnson. Try to understand. And this is the questions: why does Johnson say about Shakespeare's violation of the unities? Try to understand. So in order to compose a drama or a play, a writer should maintain at least two unities: unity of time and unity of place. But William Shakespeare violated in this case, okay, in the unities. That means William Shakespeare did not maintain the unity of time even, the unity of place even. Okay, the unity of time even, the unity of place even. Why? Because William Shakespeare didn't follow anyone, didn't copy anyone, didn't imitate anyone. William Shakespeare did what was inside his heart, inside his brain. He did it. And of course Dr. Samuel Johnson praised his wisdom, his knowledge, his excellence. Try to understand. So William Shakespeare did not follow any condition, but he listened to him. He listened to his heart. Okay, he listened to him. He didn't listen anyone. Okay, so that's why it is said that William Shakespeare violated the unities of play, the unities of drama. That means the dramatists of his time, they maintained at least two unities: unity of time and unity of place. But William Shakespeare did not maintain the unities of time and unities of place, unity of place, because this is the violation of Shakespeare in the case of dramatic unity. Maintained or mentioned, not maintained, mentioned by Dr. Samuel Johnson in his criticism, Preface to William Shakespeare. Okay, and even Dr. Johnson said that it is the unique style of William Shakespeare, that he did not follow anyone, he followed himself. He did not follow anyone, he followed himself. And what was in his heart and brain, he composed, he wrote. And that in this case, this is the creativity of William Shakespeare, the power of his wisdom, the power of his excellency. Okay, that's why we should not talk and we should not criticize about the violation of unities done by William Shakespeare in his dramas. Okay, so this is the best criticism of Dr. Samuel Johnson. Okay, so what does Johnson say about Shakespeare's violation of the unities? So this is the answer. Okay, and you will have the answer in your study book and in your academic book and guidebook. And number 4, number 2, why is Shakespeare called the poet of nature by Johnson? So whatever I told you right now about the life and grow up of William Shakespeare, so this is the answer why he is called the poet of nature. Okay, so the poet of nature is actually William Wordsworth. And after Shakespeare, you can say William Wordsworth was born in 1770 and Shakespeare was born in 1564. 1564, 1770, a long distance, more than 200 years, a distance. So William Shakespeare, why he is called the poet of nature according to Johnson? Johnson addresses William Shakespeare as a poet of nature, when in Romantic period William Wordsworth is called the poet of nature. So if you read in honors second year, the comedy, as you like it, you will have the natural element. The forest of Arden. The forest of Arden. Okay, so there you will have natural element. The life of the cowboy, the life of the shepherd, the love story in the rural area among the shepherds. Okay, and the life of the duke. Instead of the royal palace, he is leading his life under the shadow of nature in the forest of Arden. Inside the forest is a natural area. Okay, and this is not the reason. Actually, the reason is the poet, as a poet, William Shakespeare, as a poet or as a dramatist or as a sonneter, whatever, but he was brought up under the shadow of nature. So whatever he observed in his life, in his rural area, with his people, common people, men and women, he tried to present in his sonnet and in his drama and in his poem, long 3 narrative poems, and in his sonnet also, okay. So if you read and observed the literary work of William Shakespeare, you will have the simple life stories, the simple incidents, the incidents which are correlated to the natural area. So why natural elements and common stories and genuine stories are very common in the literary work of William Shakespeare? Because he grew up in the natural area. He had a close relationship and communication with the natural side, and this is the reason. Okay, and because of these reasons, William Shakespeare is called the poet of nature, according to Dr. Samuel Johnson. This is the reason, and step by step you can explain whatever is in your brain about the growth of William Shakespeare. So the growth of William Shakespeare will help you to prove it, that why Dr. Samuel Johnson called Shakespeare as the poet of nature. Okay, so the growth of Shakespeare, this is the influence of his growth. So this is the unique and best criticism criticized by Dr. Samuel Johnson. Okay, now write a short note on neoclassicism. You know about classicism. Neo means new. Classicism, classical learning, the re-establishment, the revival of classical learning, that is neoclassicism. What kind of revival? The revival of form, the revival of structure, the revival of condition, the revival of convention. Hard literary time, that is called neoclassical period. Okay, inside the neoclassical period, you will have restoration age or restoration period, you will have the age of sensibility, then you will have the Augustan age or the age of Pope, the age of sensibility or the age of Dr. Samuel Johnson, and the first part is restoration age according to the political part. Okay, but this whole 3 subdivisions are called neoclassical period. Why? According to the writers of neoclassical period, they thought that now the structure of literature is not unique, is not stylish. So if it continues over generation and generation after generation, then there will be no beautification. There will be no beautification and perfection in the literary work. That's why the writer of neoclassical period, they decided to follow an exceptional style of writing. What is that? This is the style of the Greek writers and Roman writers. This is the style of Greek writers and Roman writers in the selection of characters, in the selection of theme, and the use of structure, the use of form. Okay, so this is actually neoclassicism, the revival or restart of the classical form, structure of their literature. What is classical or classicism? Classicism refers to the literature, art, culture, painting, language, sculpture of Greece and Rome. Okay, so simply speaking, the neoclassicism, this is a doctrine, this is a theory, this is a conception. Neoclassicism is a literary conception, a literary doctrine that was used during the neoclassical period, and because of this doctrine, that period is named neoclassical period. Okay, so the writers of neoclassical period, they tried to imitate the style, structure, form, and selection of characters, selection of theme, like the Greek and Roman writers. This is actually neoclassicism. Okay, neoclassicism is a doctrine, is a theory, is a concept, is an idea. Okay, idea of what? Idea of neoclassical writer. Okay, like Pope, like Dryden, like Dr. Samuel Johnson, like William Congreve, Dr. Samuel Johnson, and Pope. They were best writers of this period, neoclassical period. Okay, and their literary works are also great and stylish, grand. Okay, but this was somewhat difficult, and in some cases totally difficult for the readers, common readers. Okay, because use of their words, I mean diction and poetic diction, style, everything was very hard. So during the neoclassical period, it was a convention and condition, like convention and condition. If you would like to prove yourself as a writer or as a part of literature, and if you would like to compose a poem, you have to maintain a specific meter, you have to maintain rhyme scheme, you have to maintain poetic diction. Okay, and your theme should be selected from the higher society, and your theme should be unique. It should be real. It should not be imaginative. It should be real. That means your theme should be collected or must be collected. Your theme, your stories, your characters must be collected from the real life, or from the higher society, or from the Holy Bible, because the story of Bible is real. The stories of Bible are real. Okay, so real incidents were very important, not imaginative. Objectivity was very important, not subjectivity. Okay, nostalgic was not important, but real incident, what's happening. And that's why satire came in the neoclassical period. Satire came because if you write about the real incident on what's going on in your society, so of course your purpose is something to give the readers. That means you would like to tell something. For example, the purpose of satire. The purpose of satire to find out your mistakes and wrong activities, and to tell you that these are your mistakes. ভালো হয়ে যাও বুঝতে পারছো, these are your mistakes, ভালো হয়ে যাও. Okay, so this is actually neoclassicism. I think you will have a good answer for this question. Write a short note on neoclassicism. This is the study of your honor second year. Then how does Johnson defend Shakespeare's mixing of comic and tragic elements? Okay, comic and tragic elements. Listen, I separately told you about comic, about his comedy and tragedy, and you can say comic and tragic. That means in one play you will have comic element and you will have tragic element. As I told you, William Shakespeare didn't follow anyone. He followed himself. Okay, he followed himself. He didn't follow anyone. He shows his unique knowledge, his genuine knowledge, pure knowledge. Okay, so the mixing of comic and tragic elements is the excellence of William Shakespeare. The mixing of comic and tragic elements is an excellent quality of William Shakespeare. It's not wrong for him. Probably according to the condition of your literary work, this is wrong, but according to William Shakespeare or according to Dr. Johnson, according to Dr. Samuel Johnson, as he criticized, he said that, okay, he mixed both elements, comic and tragic, in one play. For example, tragicomedy. Tragicomedy means you will have tragedy and comedy. That means you will have tragic element and comic element in one play. So this is the marvelous and technical creation of William Shakespeare. So this should be praised. This should not be criticized because of your condition, because of the condition of neoclassical period. Okay, this is the matter. So the next study you know very well. Discuss Johnson as a modified neoclassical critic. What do you mean by modified? Modified. You know, according to English grammar, you know about this word modifier, and this verb is modified, or this adjective is modifier, or whatever. You know about modified. This verb is very important to understand this question. So discuss Johnson as a modified neoclassical critic. So what is the duty of a critic? What are the duties and responsibilities and activity and works of a critic, any critic? So a critic is a multi-talented person. A critic of your time is a multi-talented person. So he has the knowledge of almost all branches. Like Dr. Zakir Naik is a critic, is a religious critic, there is no doubt. Dr. Zakir Naik is a religious critic. So he knows almost about maximum religions. Okay, he learned and collected information almost about all famous religions, and he collected it. Now you can ask questions and he will give you answer, and he will tell you from the Holy Bible, he will tell you from the Holy Quran, and he will tell you from the religious book of other religion. Because as a critic, it should be his quality that he will gather the knowledge of all branches. Okay, so this is the quality of a critic. Otherwise he should not be considered as a critic. So these are the qualities of the best critic. And you know, as I told you, before beginning the life story of Cowley, I read the life of the writer Dr. Samuel Johnson, and it was 22 pages, because it was very important. I thought that he is a critic, I must read his life, because if I read his life, I will learn that, I will get that how he collected knowledges from different branches of knowledge, and how he became a critic. It was very important. So this is a kind of logical question. You have to answer logically, because you have to prove it, that discuss Johnson as a modified neoclassical critic. So neoclassical because he was born and he belonged during the neoclassical period. That's why this is simple address, that neoclassical critic. You have to prove that he was a critic. Okay, so he was the qualities of, he had the abilities and qualities and capabilities of all features, characteristics and qualities of neoclassical literature, neoclassical period. This is the key sentence. Okay, then how does Johnson glorify Shakespeare as a natural poet? This is like the short question. Comment on Johnson as a critic of Shakespeare. This is also like the short question. So you have to add more information in this case. Okay, so this was simply about this literary criticism, Preface to William Shakespeare, written by Dr. Samuel Johnson. So these questions have been collected from set suggestion as the most important questions for this year 18-19. Okay, 2018 and 19. So that's why I discussed on these questions. Okay, so what can I say right now? I think it will be easy for you. তো ঠিক আছে, আজকে এ পর্যন্তই। যে আরেকটা কথা বলে দেওয়া জরুরি, যে ডক্টর স্যামুয়েল জনসন কিন্তু এটা বলছেন যে সলিলুকি কোনটা, যেমন এই যে লাইফ ইজ এ টেল টোল্ড বাই অ্যান ইডিয়েট, লাইফ ইজ এ ওয়াকিং শ্যাডো, এইরকম যে সলিলুকি কাকে বলা হয়, যখন এক স্টেজে একটা ক্যারেক্টার নিজের সঙ্গে কথা বলে, স্টেজে দাঁড়িয়ে একটা ক্যারেক্টার নিজের সঙ্গে কথা বলে, অন্য ক্যারেক্টার্সগুলো তার কথা শুনতে পায় না, কিন্তু অডিয়েন্স শুনে, কিন্তু সে অডিয়েন্সদেরকেও শোনানোর উদ্দেশ্যে বলে না। যদি অডিয়েন্সদেরকে শোনানোর উদ্দেশ্যে বলতো তাহলে ওটা ড্রামাটিক মনোলগ হয়ে যেত, ওটা সলিলুকি হইতো না, ওটা কবিতার জন্য হয়ে যেত, ড্রামাটিক মনোলগ কবিতার মতো। ড্রামাটিক মনোলগ, মনোলগ মানে হচ্ছে সিঙ্গেল স্পিকার, আর সলিলুকিতেও সিঙ্গেল স্পিকার থাকে কিন্তু উদ্দেশ্য আলাদা। যখন ড্রামাটিক মনোলগ, মনো মানে এক, মনোলগে যখন একজন ব্যক্তি কথা বলে তার উদ্দেশ্য থাকে সামনের ব্যক্তিদেরকে শোনানো, তাদের থেকে শোনা নয়, তাদেরকে সে শোনাবে, তাদেরকে উদ্দেশ্য করেই বলতেছে। কিন্তু ড্রামার ক্ষেত্রে একটা ক্যারেক্টার যে সলিলুকিতে যে যাকে সলিলুকি বলা হচ্ছে সেটা হচ্ছে যে একটা ক্যারেক্টার স্টেজে যাবে, ছবিতে অনেক সময় দেখবা যে এই যে একটা ক্যারেক্টার নিজের সঙ্গে কথা বলতেছে, তার মুখ লড়তেছে না কিন্তু সাউন্ড আমরা শুনতেছি, অডিয়েন্সরা শুনতেছি, কিন্তু সেই ক্যারেক্টার তো জানে না, অন্য ক্যারেক্টার্স তো জানে না সে মনে মনে কি ভাবতেছে বা কি বলতেছে। দিস ইজ কল্ড সলিলুকি। তো ট্র্যাজেডিতে যে সলিলুকিগুলো উইলিয়াম শেক্সপিয়ার লিখছেন তার ট্র্যাজেডিতে, কারণ ট্র্যাজেডিতে সলিলুকি কেন হয়, একজন একজন যে ট্র্যাজিক হিরো হয় সে যখন ভুল করে ফেলে যে যখন সে ধ্বংসের দিকে এগিয়ে যায় বা তার ডাউনফলের দিকে এগিয়ে যায় তখন সে জীবনের ফলাফল সম্পর্কে বুঝতে পেরে সে একা একা নিজের সঙ্গে কথা বলে। দিস ইজ সলিলুকি। বুঝতে পারছো, ম্যাকবেথে আছে দিস ইজ সলিলুকি, লাইফ ইজ এ টেল টোল্ড বাই অ্যান ইডিয়েট, এইরকম সে। তো বলা হচ্ছে according to জনসন, স্যামুয়েল জনসন, দ্য সলিলুকিস অফ উইলিয়াম শেক্সপিয়ার্স ট্র্যাজেডি আর নট দ্য বেস্ট, নট ইউনিক। এই কথা এতটুকু তথ্য মনে রাখলেই ভালো হবে যে এগুলা অত উন্নত নয়, অত উন্নত নয় এটা আমরা বললেই তো মেনে নিব না, কারণ সে ডক্টর স্যামুয়েল জনসন এই কথা বলছে, কিন্তু আরও তো 500 জন ক্রিটিক বলছে যে তার সলিলুকিগুলো বেস্ট। তো আমরা তো জনসনেরটা শুনবো না, আমরা অন্যগুলো শুনবো। কিন্তু এখন আমরা এই কারণে শুনবো বা পড়বো যেহেতু তার উপর আমাদেরকে পড়তে হচ্ছে, লিখতে হবে, এই কারণে। তো অ্যাকর্ডিং টু ডক্টর স্যামুয়েল জনসন, দ্য সলিলুকিস অফ শেক্সপিয়ার্স ট্র্যাজেডি আর নট দ্য বেস্ট, নট দ্য ইউনিক। কারণটা কি? কারণ তিনি যে ওইরকম সোসাইটিতে বিলংই করেননি, সেখান থেকে তিনি কি মনোভাব উঠায় নিয়ে আসবেন, যাও উঠায় নিয়ে আসছেন বহুত কষ্টে ওগুলাকে সেট করছেন তিনি, অ্যাকর্ডিং টু জনসন। ওকে, বাট দ্য সলিলুকি অফ হিজ কমেডি দ্য সেম অপিনিয়ন, দ্য সলিলুকি অফ হিজ কমেডি দ্য সেম অপিনিয়ন। কারণ সলিলুকি ইজ দ্য পারসেপশন, এটা বুঝতে হবে। সলিলুকি ইজ দ্য পারসেপশন অফ ইউর ক্যারেক্টার, মানে ইউ হ্যাভ ডান রং, ইউ হ্যাভ ডান মিস্টেক্স, you have done mistake, now you would like to purify yourself or you are going to die. যেমন অনেক পাপী মানুষ মারা যাওয়ার আগে ভালো হয়ে যায়, অনেক পাপী মানুষ মারা যাওয়ার আগে বুঝতে পারে his perception is I did wrong, I need to purify my soul. এই যে এইরকম একটা মুহূর্তে মানুষ যখন নিজের সঙ্গে কথা বলে বুঝতে পারে যে না যা করে আসছি ভুল ছিল, এই যে নিজের সঙ্গে কথা বলছে এটা হচ্ছে সলিলুকি। তো এই সলিলুকিটা সুন্দর কখন হবে? যে গল্পটার উপর সলিলুকি লিখতেছেন সেই গল্পটা ইউনিক হতে হবে, কোনো কঠিন বা উন্নত মানের সোসাইটি থেকে হতে হবে, তাহলে তোমার সলিলুকিটাও বেস্ট হবে। এটা হচ্ছে যুক্তি কার? ডক্টর স্যামুয়েল জনসনের যুক্তি এটা। কিন্তু উই অ্যাভয়েড দ্য যুক্তি অফ ডক্টর স্যামুয়েল জনসন, ঠিক আছে? বিকজ উই শুড ফলো দ্য যুক্তি অফ আদার রাইটার্স, আদার ক্রিটিক্স, হোয়াট দে সে অ্যাবাউট দ্য লিটারেরি ওয়ার্ক অফ উইলিয়াম শেক্সপিয়ার, অ্যাবাউট দ্য সলিলুকি অফ উইলিয়াম শেক্সপিয়ার. But for the sake of our exam, we should learn it, and I told you. Okay? So no more tonight. Thanks all for joining, and try to join everyone.